Good evening. The purpose of this meeting is to conduct the business of the Gettysburg Area School District. Public comment is welcome, and issues will be referred to the appropriate board, committee, or administrator. Comments will be summarized in the official board minutes, which will be made available by contacting the business office. Please take a moment to silence any electronic devices. Brooke, everybody would be present this evening. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Citizens' participation, Al.
Thank you, President Hassinger, and good evening, everyone. We have two people that have asked to address the board this evening. We'll start with Mr. Bob Stillwell.
Thank you, Dr. Moyer, for that warm introduction. Mr. President, I rise to remark on the totally unacceptable process the school administration has been trying to use to get you to approve the expenditure of $34 million without you, to my knowledge, even knowing what you will be spending it on. I spent a 50-year career in government and industry procurement, and I am appalled at what I have seen regarding this procurement. I have asked your business office on numerous occasions to see the procurement parts or the roll-up of the subcomponents that make up the statement of work that then lead to the $34 million total. I have been told that at this time, and I quote, "the details have not been done." Just on the face of it, the notion that it would cost $34 million to replace 2 elementary school HVAC systems and 2 roofs flies in the face of believability. And recently, we've been told that there may be nothing wrong with any of them. I'm sure that each of you at some time has been driving down the road and seen a furry black and white recent dead animal ahead and thought to yourself, oh God, this is really going to stink. Well, I can tell you from my substantial experience in major program procurements that this project is really going to stink. In fact, it already stinks. From what I've been able to get from your business and facilities offices, to me the message is, Train, I have $34 million that is burning a hole in my pocket. Please tell me how to spend it. Then I'll give you a contract to do just that. Unless the members of this board know more than we do about what you are being asked to approve millions of dollars for, the very fact that such an item is back on the board's agenda for approval, apparently without modification, after being recently rejected, is subject to serious question. If you vote tonight to approve this expenditure, you would be well advised to define carefully and publicly what you think you are voting to spend $34 million of taxpayer money on. Because from what I see, this fiasco will never withstand an investigative audit. Thank you, Mr. President, for the board's time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. And we also have someone else that would like to address the board, Ms. Sharon Birch.
Thank you. My name is Sharon Birch. I'm a resident of Gettysburg and have children who have been through Gettysburg schools, one currently in high school. The Policy Committee of the GASD Board is considering changes proposed by the superintendent to the policy related to book challenges. This was discussed in detail at the November 15th Policy Committee meeting. I'm going to hone in on one part of the document. In addition to proposing an opt-out option for parents, the draft policy also includes an escalation of options, including the option to, quote, require the students who do access the challenge materials to meet with a counseling professional, end quote. This could apply to all students accessing a book that may have been challenged by any member of the community. This would marginalize and stigmatize students interested in any of the topics that most frequently get challenged. It directly communicates to students that their interest in this material is evidence of a problem. The LGBTQ kids out there who already kind of feel like this community hates them, you'd tell them that if they'd like to read a book with a gay character in it, that they need to see a counselor? I'm not sure which is worse, removing books and sending the message that their lives and experiences are erasable, or sending them the message that there's something wrong with them that needs a conversation with a counselor. And it's not just that. What will you do when someone challenges books about Black history that they think are too woke? Because that's already happening all over the country. Who wants to tell a student as they turn in something like Stamped from the Beginning that they now need to go see the school counselor? Your first reaction is probably, well, of course that won't happen. That's not the intention. But if a policy can be used in a particular manner, even if that was not the original intent, then that possibility is encoded as district policy. Can you see the headline? School district requires counseling for students who check out Black history books? It's not a good look for the district. Even if you never actually required any students to see a guidance counselor after turning in a book, the fact, if this option were enacted as policy, it effectively bans books, whether they remain on the shelves or not, because no middle school or high school student will check them out or even touch them. This is probably the most likely outcome if this policy were enacted. It's a hidden ban, but it is a ban by all but name. Now, I assumed that none of the proposed ideas are in opposition to existing laws and regulations. I'm not a lawyer, but this may or may not be the case. PA Title 24, Section 9375 states, and I quote, "Records of the following institutions which relate to the circulation of library materials and contains the names or other personally identifying information of users of the material shall be confidential and may not be made available to anyone except by a court order in a criminal proceeding." The section goes on to list which types of libraries this applies to, and the fourth item on the list is the library of a public school. In order to require counseling for students who check out certain books, the library staff would have to release names of users. That would be in direct violation of Title 24, subsection 9375. And finally, just because other districts are doing something doesn't mean GASD has to. Maybe we can be a beacon for letting teachers and librarians do their jobs and for letting students read what they need to read. Here's my proposed policy. GASD will not negotiate the free access to any and all materials that professional librarians and professional teachers deem important for our public school libraries. Thank you.
Thank you. Typically, we do not address back, and Mr. Stillwell, actually, some of your questions will probably be addressed during a motion and question. But Mike, with policy, do you have any comment quickly?
I mean, to Ms. Birch, I can just say that the policy committee has met, and there is no draft policy that's even been brought to the committee. There's just been discussion. We're still exploring options and looking what other districts are doing, but there has been no discussion of even a draft policy at this point, so I appreciate your comments.
That brings us to routine approvals. This evening, I had a request to remove or separate 5.2 and 5.6. Amy Beth requested that. So I am going to entertain two different motions. The first motion would be a motion for 5.1, 5.3, 5.4, and 5.5.
So moved.
Second.
Question. Hearing no question, roll call. Timon. Michelle.
Yes.
Amy Beth.
Yes.
Al.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Jeremy.
Yes.
Ryan.
Yes.
Tim.
Yes.
And I vote yes. That brings us to 5.2. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Question on the motion.
5.2 was something that I hope to discuss.
You may have the floor.
I have to apologize. We are not connecting right now to our internet, so I'm going to be reading from my phone. 5.2 is what I'm referring to. So after, make sure I got my stuff together. After a review of our financial report, I found I had more concerns related to our district procurement cards and their spending. I wanted to detail some of my concerns and offer a possible solution. I have served on our wellness committee within our district for several years. Our committee was able to achieve and successfully address outdoor food being given to our student body. The school board voted unanimously in favor of changes brought forth by our committee. Our committee got to have an open discussion about skyrocketing obesity rates in Adams County, food allergies that range from celiac, peanut allergies, gluten intolerance, negative reactions to food coloring, and dyes, type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Students still could enjoy celebrations such as cupcakes on their birthdays, but those items could be ordered and purchased through our building's cafeterias. This way, the items are labeled and no student will go without a reward or a celebration based on a dietary limitation. A focus of nutritious options like fruits and vegetables would be encouraged. Our district's wellness committee will be gathering once again to discuss topics like these. Having our staff order food rewards and celebration items through the cafeteria would not only support a healthier and safer way to offer food, but it would allow us to become more self-sufficient and fiscally responsible, and more importantly, lead by example to our students. Once our committee decides on a date, I will update you. But for me tonight, I would be unable to support many of these line items within our financial report, and I hope this helps you all understand that for me, this is about wellness and health of our students and staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Hearing none, roll call. Tim?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Timon?
Yes.
Amy Beth?
No.
Jeremy?
Yes.
Al?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Brings us to our last routine approval item, 5.6. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Question on the motion.
I also requested that this be pulled. The specific item I would like to talk about is the potential replacement for Assistant Director of Facilities. This administrative staff position is quite costly, and I believe the public should be aware of what's taken place. So this is a brief overview of from my perspective. In January of 2021, we received an abrupt resignation from Wayne Crosby, who had been embarking on a major mechanical capital improvement project. Mr. Crosby asked to never be contacted for any reason by our district, which left us in quite a predicament. Then we created a short-term plan to address our situation. Then we elevated our current employee, Mr. James Hoffman, offering him a 10% pay increase to temporarily replace Mr. Crosby. We aggressively started searching for a permanent replacement that resulted in our district hiring Joshua Reynolds. Reynolds is now our Director of Facilities Manager, and Mr. Hoffman would now become the Assistant Facilities Director. Our district has recently been given notice that Mr. Hoffman would like to retire, and I really do wish Mr. Hoffman the best retirement possible. For me, I really had hoped that this retirement would be recognized by our district as a blessing and considering the recession that we are in. By not filling that position, we could save the taxpayer $70,000 plus benefits. So I have two questions for our superintendent, if I may. How long has our district had an Assistant Director of Facilities, and what examples can you give as to why this position is necessary at this time?
We've had an assistant pretty much the last couple of years that I've been here. Prior to my arrival, I don't know the history there, but as you recall, one of the things that we did. One of the reasons that we created the assistant director was actually a cost-saving measure. We reduced other positions basically department heads and 2 other facilities areas, and then put those areas underneath the assistant director. So by creating the assistant director position, we actually reduced cost for personnel in that department. So that's currently the model that we have. That's currently the model we would like to continue with. And we chose a solid candidate to fulfill that role.
I really appreciate it. Those were 2 questions that I didn't have answers to. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are there any additional questions on 5.6? Hearing none, roll call. Timon? Michelle?
Yes.
Amy Beth?
No?
Al?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Items for board action, 6.1. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So for the board, a little different, to make this as crystal clear as it can possibly be, it'll be a roll call vote. If you look at your agenda, you'll see method 1 being the build design services with a cooperative purchasing network. It's basically, or not basically, it is the recommendation originally by the administration. Method 2 is a build design. It's essentially an ESCO project that this board has discussed over the last, I don't know how many meetings, 8, 9 maybe. And the third option is a no vote. So as we go through after question and we get to the time for voting, it'll be a roll call vote, which is somewhat different instead of just a straight motion. As you get your name called, you will choose a particular method. Method 1 being the administration's recommendation. Method 2 being the ESCO project. Method 3 is a no vote across the board. I would remind the board, too, if you look at the motion that's on the floor right now, it is not designed as approving a budget. It is not designed as saying that the project is moving forward. It's saying that we're looking at which method, if this board at a later date approves the spending or the budget for that. Tonight is not, this motion tonight is not that. So as you vote, I want everyone to be crystal clear that that is not the purpose of this motion this evening, or this item. So, I have a motion, it's been seconded. Do I have question on the motion on the floor?
Mr. President, I don't have a question, but I'd like to just reiterate what you said. This HVAC project for these 2 elementary schools have been on the capital improvement plan for 5 years plus before I was even elected to this board. And we need to make it crystal clear. We are not approving a budget. We are not approving the project. We are not issuing a blank check. We are just going to decide how we're going to move forward with this project that's been discussed and talked about for years and planned for years. We can't get a punch sheet and a list of bid materials until we start having engineers design, bid, and build it, correct? I just want to make it crystal clear that we're just talking about how we're going to proceed with this project. We've talked about it for, I think it was slated to actually be discussed and approved last spring, and we're coming up on a year now. So I just kind of don't understand some of the outrage from the public, like we're trying to ram this through. We're just trying to figure out how we're going to do it.
Mr. President.
Good.
Well, part of the thing of it is, too, is some of the reason that it didn't pass the last time was because once that actual bid came in, we as a board could not remove stuff from it because of the time frame that we were on. So it got voted down. Now that happens, when we get whichever way we do it, or if we do it, when the bid actually comes in and we can actually look at that and decide, oh, we don't want the lighting, we don't want the roofing. Before we couldn't do that. Now we can do that. That's number one. Number two, it has been on the capital projects before most of us got on the board, before Josh was here. So it's nobody's pet project. It was already on the list of things to do. And by approving one or the other, or none at all, whichever anybody wants to choose, then there will be an actual hard estimate. This is a rough idea number. That estimate could come in way lower. We're not giving anybody a blank check. This is just a rough idea of what it could cost. When the actual hard bid comes in, then we'll know, and then we will discuss whether we're going to approve that or not and what we want to keep or don't take out of it. You know, it's been a misconception that we're trying to write a blank check for this project. We are not. This is just a rough idea what it is. Until we get a hard estimate from those, we don't know. And this is just a way to procure that hard estimate.
Any additional questions or comments?
Kenny, I just want to say for everybody who's out there, I think everybody knows that I've been the one that kind of stirred the pot a little bit. But I want you to understand, I do have somewhat of a facilities background. And I can tell you that once HVAC units get to 20 years, they really do start to lose their efficiency, their effectiveness, and it is better to consider replacing them. But like everybody else here, I'm not willing to write a blank check to do anything, but I do want to make sure that our buildings and our facilities in general are up to standard and up to par. And you know, as long as we have the right to take things out and replace them or not do this or not do that, you know, I'm okay with it. But there are some things that we have to do. It's just maintenance has to get done. That's it.
Mr. Hassinger,
Amy Beth.
it has been something that has been up for discussion. So I think that there are some folks from the community who have had questions and have voiced concerns. I myself have some questions that I still have unanswered. And I don't like to act hastily when we're talking about such a large dollar amount. $34 million is a lot of money, especially considering what people are going through right now. I would be more inclined to slow down, and I would like to put a motion to table this item so that we could have further discussions and allow that communication to happen naturally instead of rushing, where I feel that I have made a decision 2 months ago to vote no for this project based on questions at that time. More questions have come up, and I do not want to rush when it comes to this type of dollar figure.
Well, there's a motion to table it, so you would need a second to table it. Or the other option would be that you would vote option 3. Yeah, if there's no second to
Is there a second to the motion?
table. Okay.
Is there a second to the motion?
What? Does it?
There's,
What is, yeah, are you seconding the motion to table?
No, I'm second motion, and we move forward with it.
Okay, so I wanted to make sure we're clear. So without a second to table the motion, the motion fails, and we would proceed in voting either method 1, 2, or 3. which would be-
right.
Right.
And I want to reiterate, I thought I did that at the beginning. I thought we did this in other meetings. The motion this evening is not to write a blank check, as Tim Sigmund had mentioned. The motion is allow this board to determine which method, if if it determines a method, get the pricing, get the bids, then come back to the table and see what is adequately represented or needed in terms of the overall project. And we've had people come in and talk about the lighting, we've had people write about the internet, and I personally agree with the speaker and some of the emails that we got. And that's something that I can't evaluate even at this point until we choose a particular method on how to explore this. That's the motion as I see it on the floor. So method one would be the administration's recommendation through train. Option two would be, as Josh put it, step back and put it out through the ESCO. And option three, or method three, is a no vote across the board on the project.
Mr. President,
Yes.
and as I see it, if I'm not confused, so whatever we would, if we would pass one or two, whichever one of those, when that hard estimate comes back, then we would then have the time to ask whatever questions we choose to have at that point in time, correct?
That's my understanding. This is not to ratify or sign on to a
Everybody's
particular
questions
project.
could still be answered, especially then we would have a hard
It still has to go
number
before,
knowing.
it would still have to go before a full board vote as to whether or not we're proceeding with the project.
Thank you.
None of that's changing here this evening.
This provides approval of a procurement method so that all future conversations, as opposed to going back and talking about other methods, we can actually focus on the actual project at hand, the design, and have those questions and conversations that folks want to have. Yeah.
I know that I tried to reach out to get more clarification on my own independently. I did talk to a professional that has worked on HVAC systems, not here locally, although they are a Gettysburg area taxpayer. I'm going to quote that individual. Said that my office is in agreement that you could damn near build new schools for that amount. And it really is about that for me. It's not the project and the questions that I still have. It is the dollar amount and the excessively large dollar amount that we have. We now just approved assistant or facilities. So we now are paying over $100,000 for the director of facilities, and now $70,000 plus benefits for both. And that's a lot of money. That's something that is to be considered. I know I'm considering it, and that's why I was hoping that we could take our time and have the community, along with board members, talk about those things.
Are there any additional questions or comments before roll call? Timon?
Dealing with this project and what we're going to do with it and what we're not going to do with it for over a year. It's my understanding that if we approve one of these, well, not one of them, method one or method two, that we have the right as a board first to change that vote and say no if we decide we can't pull out what we want to pull out. But if we can pull out what we want to pull out and make the adjustments as we see fit, I think it's time we get off.
That's my understanding. Belinda, would this not be very similar to the project we are finishing and finished at the high school, where the board had voted X amount and it came in at X amount based upon certain changes that we made? Because I know that came in under budget. Would this be, am I in reality with saying that?
It's a different procurement model from the original design bid build stage that we did for the HVAC at the high school. The one advantages of this procurement method is you don't necessarily have to take the lowest bidder and deal with change orders down the road. But you still will have options options available to you to decide, no, I don't want to do the lighting, no, I don't want to do this or do that. That is not this stage. And I think we've kind of communicated before that we are not at the final stages of a statement of work. We are only at the estimate stage. And this is really only, as you mentioned, many of you, this is really only setting a procurement method to move forward.
So if the estimate comes in 6 to 8 weeks, and this board does not like the estimate, we're not locked into anything.
That's true.
So it would be very similar to the high school when we approved an initial budget not to exceed, I think it was around $26 million, and we came in around $17 million based on decisions that the board made to save taxpayer money. So we have the option, once again, just to reiterate, we have the option to review and decide what parts we want to move forward with and what parts we don't, or if the budget design build bid comes in and it's something that we're not comfortable with, we have the right to say no. We just need to choose which procurement method we're going to move forward with. Like, there's a project, this is like, not to beat a dead horse, but this has been on the books for like 5 years. And it's a project that we know that we have to do. We just need to figure out which procurement method we're going to explore to try and kick the project off.
And not to mention, we can't, it's hard to say yes or no to a project in general until we have the actual number it's going to cost. Right now, we don't know. Right now, we're mentioning 34 million. It could come in at 30. It could come in 28. It could be 40, but we don't know until that bid actually comes in. So trying to write something off until you actually have a hard number is hard to do. So we need to get the hard number so we can make that decision.
Anything additional? Okay, roll call vote, method one, as I said earlier, is the district recommendation through train. Method two is the ESCO project, and method three is simply a no vote. Roll call, Al.
Method one.
Tim.
Method one.
Mike.
Method one.
Jeremy.
Method one.
Timon.
Method one.
Amy Beth.
No.
Ryan.
2.
Michelle.
2.
And I would go with method one. Brooke, you have the tallies on the motion. Method one is what? I apologize, 6. Thank you. Motion moves forward with method one and to be determined at a later date. Informational items, policy 918, Title I, Parent and Family Engagement.
It's just information.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry, Mike.
I was just going to go ahead. It's just an informational item that was discussed at our last policy committee meeting. So it's an informational item today.
Mike?
Yep, so we discussed, my apologies. We discussed policy 918, Title I, Parent and Family Engagement at the last policy committee meeting. Dr. Lay gave us an overview of that. And we also were in still the discussion stages of a book policy, a book review policy. So there'll be, I'm sure, a couple of more meetings surrounding that one before it comes to the board.
I'll keep to my right. Tim? Anything?
Our next Building and Finance Committee should be December 1st, I believe, unless there's a change or we have to move it up for some reason, but that's it.
Amy Beth?
As far as the LIU board, which I serve on, that will meet on the 29th, and I'll update you after that. I have a legislative report. The General Assembly has finished its work for the 2021-2022 legislative session, with legislators in the Senate and House of Representatives spending this week delivering farewells and thank yous. Following the election and looking ahead to January, Pennsylvania will be a new administration for first time in 8 years, with the inauguration of Josh Shapiro as governor and Austin Davis, lieutenant governor. Transition meetings have already begun. In the State General Assembly, Republicans will retain control of Senate, while control of the House is still undetermined, as races for 2 seats are unresolved. The balance of power in the and the House rests on the outcome of those 2 races. Election results will also impact committee selections in the General Assembly. In both chambers, committee memberships and chairs will change due to the retirements of election losses. Committee chair and rosters are expected to be announced in January. For the Senate, in this most recent cycle, senators in the even-numbered districts were up for election for a 4-year term. The Republicans will retain majority of the status with 28 to 22 seats advantage. Of the 25 seats up for election, there are 19 incumbents who will return to the Senate, including 8 Republicans and 11 Democrats. House of Representatives is next. All 203 members of the House were up for election for the 2-year term. At that time, election results show Democrats have won 102 House seats and Republicans 101 seats. I expect there to be a struggle in leadership over the next few months. In addition, 3 special elections will have been held at a later date. One is to fill the seat held by Anthony DeLuca, who died in October, strangely winning by a huge margin. The other 2 elections will fill vacancies for legislators who ran for 2 seats. Representative Summer Lee also won her bid to represent the 12th congressional district in the U.S. House of Representatives. Austin Davis was elected as the state's new lieutenant governor. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. I know I've asked a couple meetings. Have you had an opportunity to talk to any of our legislative people about property tax relief and charter school reform? Because I know
I would like to have any emails that any of my fellow board members have any questions, and also that from the public. I welcome those. Thank you.
I understand, but
You don't. I would like you to email me if you have any questions.
you're a legislative liaison for the district. I'm only asking if you've had conversation, you've met with these people from time to time. Has property tax relief come up or charter schools? That's all I asked. 2 separate meetings. I'm just asking now, following up.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
President Hassinger, I just want to give a correction on the finance and facilities date. It's December 15th.
Thank you.
Yep.
Program reports.
Just a reminder, no school on Wednesday, no school on Monday. Hope that everybody and their families and friends have a fantastic Thanksgiving holiday. And if you're headed to the woods next week, good luck and be careful.
Calendar of events, our next meeting will be a 2-pronged meeting. December 5th, a reorganization at 7 p.m., followed by our regular school board meeting. May I have a motion to adjourn? We stand adjourned.